You can see the slide as well, right?
Yes.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so good day, everyone, again. Apologies for the glitch. My name is Yasir Yusuf. You can call me Yaz for short, or Aklad. I'm here to talk about security best practice fundamentals in DevSecOps. So just a quick rundown about myself, or who am I? I'm a cybersecurity engineer, and I work as a bug bounty hunter on a part-time basis. And you can find me online at Aklad. So, and just to mention, I'm a mediocre comedian. I try to make people, laugh, but unfortunately, I never see them laughing. I think I have to just improve, my jokes. And also, just to mention, I've been acknowledged by Dell. I've had the opportunity to work with Dell, Yahoo, United States Department of Defense, Pinterest, Mapbox, Starbucks, Dropbox, everything box. I think you'll find me there. So an obligatory disclaimer. I think this is really important because during this presentation, I would be looking into some practical, aspects of, security, where I will be showing you how to access, you know, or how to find misconfigurations in system. Please don't use this maliciously, and do not do things unless you have explicit, permission to do them. Do not attack companies unless you have the permission to do that. So if you have the permission, you can go ahead. And also, when you see something, you say something ethically. If you see a misconfiguration or a confidential information, secrets, or anything belonging to an organization, so you have to, report to the company immediately, probably at security@thecompany.com or whatever their, security email is. So I think if you don't do that, you might be playing with, jail time or perhaps fines. So I'm not your supervisor if you get caught. So I'm afraid. So don't mention my name. So I'm not your supervisor. So for this presentation, we actually need basic coding knowledge. It's not really basic, but from my experience, I believe since we are talking about fundamentals here, we wouldn't be needing much of coding knowledge. So if you don't know how to code, so I believe there are no issues here. Just stay put and let's do this. So for programming language, like I mentioned before, so you don't actually need any language for now. Just follow and let's do it. So at the end of the talk, you should be able to explain what DevSecOps best practices are, especially in the SDLC, which is the software development life cycle. And also, you should be able to identify sinks and sources in code. So I'm going to explain that very soon. And also, you should be able to explain the importance of monitoring user inputs during code review or during the life cycle of your project. And also, the OWASP top 10 vulnerabilities, you should be able to understand what they are. You might not be able to, like say or to mention these 10 vulnerabilities for now, but you should have an idea what these vulnerabilities are. Because these vulnerabilities, they are like the foundation of all vulnerabilities. They are the most, what will I say? I think they are common. They are usually found in everywhere. You can find them everywhere. And as a developer, as a DevOps engineer, you have to have understanding of this vulnerability. You have to make sure, okay, this vulnerability, I know how it works. I know how to find it. Whenever I write a code like this vulnerability might be present in this code. So at the end, I should have a well-trained eye as well. That is, you have to know how to check your code to see whatever you're doing wrong, and something related to that. So DevSecOps. So I believe everyone here, perhaps majority of us, have an idea what DevOps is. But just to make it simple, DevOps plus security. So the DevOps, everything when it comes to DevOps, whenever you put security in it, or whenever you attach the security process, or you make sure everything you're doing is secure. So that's just the DevSecOps. So I said DevSecOps is a team sport and a culture of collaboration between the development, security, and operations team. So just these three teams, working together, coming together as one, bringing the project from the beginning till the end, making sure everything is being done during the project and at the end of the project, and also the planning phase as well. So like this meme at the right hand side of the screen. So just trying to take a chair up a stair. You make sure it's a teamwork. So it would be very difficult for one of them to lift up this chair up the stair. So it's a team sport and a culture of collaboration. So the next slide here, before we get started, I would like to talk about some terminologies or some interesting concepts you might find interesting during the course of uh, DevOps or DevSecOps, or because of your job or anything or your project. So first thing which is important for you to know is for you to understand what encoding is. So when it comes to encoding and encryption, they kind of look alike and hashing, but it's actually something different. So encoding, when it comes to encoding, it's a reversible transformation of data formats used to preserve the usability of data. So let me just come here, and so we have a lot of encoding. So let's say we have base 64, for example. Now let's say base 64 encode. I hope you can see my screen here, right? Just to make sure.
Yes, yes, you can see your screen.
Yeah, cool. So if you want to encode something, it's not like it's you are keeping it secret, but probably due to the state of your project, or how you want to use the input, or how you want to use the data, that's what will prompt you to encode a data. For example, now you want to make sure your code is not going as a plain sight, as a plain text code. So for example, you want to say, I am happy, for example. I am happy. So when you encode it as the base 64, so it's going to be like this. You might send this to someone. It's not a secure way of sharing something confidential, because anyone can just come to this site or come to base 64 decode to to decode whatever you've sent. So it's not a secure way of sharing data, but it's just used to to store data in a different format. So whenever we decode it here, we have happy. So that's just encoding. So we have the base 64 encoding. We have the URL encoding. Let's see, URL encoding. So let's assume you want to URL encode something, for example. Let's say I'm happy again. Encode. Look at it. So it's not going to encode the name itself, but it's going to encode the space between the names. There's another URL encoding. I think it's called the HTML entity. Yep, I think this is it. So when you do this, it's kind of different, because it is going to encode all. It's going to encode everything. I don't know why that's not working. I'm coming. Let me see. Okay, this is base 64. Anyway, that's strange. but the URL encode is going to like come up with an something like the HTML encode is going to come up with something like the HTML entity, stuff like these, stuff like this. So it's not a secure way of transferring data. It's just a way of converting your data from one format to the other. So going back to the slide, we have encoding, and also we have escaping. So escaping in security is really important. So whenever you're writing code and you notice, okay, these are the possibility of users to write something, or these are the possibility of users to put a value that might be dangerous to my application. For example, let's say the user, for example, is dropping something like, okay, I am happy again. At the end of I'm happy is using a quote or this or a double quote or stuff like this. So if you want to, like if you want to, what's it called? If you want to escape this, you are going to do something like, okay, cool. You're just going to make sure, okay, everything must be filtered. You have to make sure you filter all bad inputs. So you have to filter the bad inputs. So starting from these quotes, this double quote, and this ampersand. So you have to make sure everything that might affect your application is being filtered or escaped. So at the end, at your back, at your probably your database, what you will have is just this. You've removed everything that might, affect the SQL code at the back of your from probably your SQL, what's it called, command. So this what's it called, quotes, double quotes, and stuff. They are able to, break SQL command, and if they're able to break your SQL command, so they're able to retrieve anything from your server. So it's just as simple as doing 0 or 1 equal to 1. So if okay, don't let me go into details of this, but we're going to go into details probably soon. So you have to filter the bad inputs. You have to make sure, okay, the user is not able to enter something dangerous to your database, to your, to your project and stuff. So this is just escaping. And when it comes to encryption, encryption is like, closing the door of your house and locking it with a key. While encoding is just closing the door of your house. Anyone can just come inside and just open the door. And when it comes to encryption, when you use a key, that means you need that key to decrypt the encrypted data. So that's kind of, that's the stronger than encryption. So it is usually used, I think we have the AES 256 encryption. We have a lot of encryption types, so you can just, find out about that. But for now, just understand that encryption, it requires, using a key, and also you whenever you want to decrypt it, you need that key. I think that's just the basics of that. But when it comes to hashing, when you hash data or you hash a value or any kind of secret information, you are not able to retrieve them back, except in few cases. It means, okay, let me do this. Whenever I hash something like this, my strong password, let's assume this is my password, my Google password now. And also after hashing, after hashing, it becomes something like this. Let's just assume we have something like this in my database, right? So this is my database, and this is my front-end application. So I'll have to save the password in a secure way, right? So the hashing is done, and I'll have something like this. So there's a possibility of you using like a timestamp to hash, what's it called? It will act as a secret. We can only have one time. For example, now the time is 1:25, and also we have the seconds. Probably is the 36th second. So that will act as a secret for the hashing. I'm just giving you an example. So for the next person that is going to come up with a new password, so their password will come and another hash will come here, which will be something different. But this hash you can't decode it back to your previous data here. All you have to just do whenever a user wants to log in is like for you to compare the hash. You have to just check this user and compare it with the input of the user and compare it with the hash of the in the database. So if the hash matches, so then the password is correct. But if the hash doesn't match, it means the password is incorrect. So basically, that's just about hashing, just for us not to go much into details about that. So we have security bugs and vulnerabilities as well. So when it comes to security bugs and vulnerabilities, these are security issues that might affect the flow of an application or, or that might be used for what an application is not intended for. For example, I am to pay $200 for a shirt now, and I'm able to pay $5 for it now. So definitely that's a security issue. Yeah, I have a lab here, for example, and security issue. Okay, this is portswigger.net. So I have it in the resources tab. So we'll get there. So okay, just a minute. I've not solved this, but I think it should be easy. So for us to access this lab, they ask us to like access unprotected admin functionality. So the thing here is that the when it comes to security issue, you would or you could have access to something you shouldn't have access to. You would be able to do something you shouldn't be able to do initially. For example, you are the admin of, or you're a normal user in an application and you are able to become an admin. So just to not to waste much of our time, so whenever we want to do something pen test or stuff, we have to do robots.txt. The robots.txt file, I'm sure a lot of us have probably seen it very well. So they are just used to stop what's it called, these Google bots from accessing protected, protected functionality or protected directories in your application. So robot.txt. So now this robot.txt is preventing Google from indexing this directory. So whenever I visit this directory, for example, as a normal user, you see I'm not logged in or anything. Whenever I visit this directory, there's possibility of me being able to, I can delete any user just by visiting this directory. So when this is the case, it's a security issue. I'm not even logged in. You see, I'm not logged in. I just clicked this, what's it called? So this is a lab. It's just for testing your, security knowledge and stuff. So I can delete any user. Imagine someone who didn't have access to this meeting is able to remove anyone from this meeting. Imagine anyone just coming out from anywhere, without access to the daas.ng and is able to remove the admin or able to delete any user, details and stuff. So that's exactly what we are just trying to see here. That security vulnerabilities, you see, I've been able to, delete the user successfully. I can delete all the users. So I think that's kind of crazy. So we have to be very careful about security vulnerabilities. So security vulnerabilities is just using the application in a way or in ways that are not intended for. So let's look at sink and source. Sink or source, when you talk about source, it means wherever the user input is coming from. We have the login page, we have the search bar, we have the profile update page. Why the sink is where the user input is being probably is being used. Let me put used or is being executed. For example, you might use the sink in an inner HTML tag. What's it called now? You might use it in probably any function that might be able to execute user commands. So that's the sink. So whenever you enter something on a website, wherever you enter it is the source, but wherever it is going after that is the sink. Notice that sometimes whenever you enter your email, whenever you are registering on a website or you are signing up for an account, at the end of the day, you find your user email on the profile page. So that you are not the one that put it there, but it is being reused in that function. So that's the sink. Why the source? Wherever you enter your user information is the source. So test. So we have two type of testing. So testing is just to check the security standard of your application. So we have the white box text and we have the black box testing. So the white box is just you having access to the code. You're able to read the code. You're able to check out the code, scan the code, and do stuff like that. While the black box is you don't have access to the code. You're just doing everything blindly. You are trying to get access to every part of the applications, getting access to things you don't have access to normally. And this is the black box, which is kind of difficult, but the white box is easier because you have access to the code and you are able to navigate around and see where the sink are, where the source are, and stuff like that. You're able to see commands that are executed, and this will make it easier to detect vulnerabilities or even to use automated scan tools. So we have the security best practices or secure best practices in DevOps. So I said these are rules applied to all aspects of our work throughout the lifetime of the project. So these aspects might include the tech stack. So firstly, when you're dealing with DevSecOps project or any project, so you have to make sure this tech stack you're using is what conforms with what you're doing. For example, if you are expecting high usage or probably the users you're expecting is 10,000 thousands of users in or per minute, then the tech stack probably using something like React is a good idea instead of using other. But I don't want to name shame any tech stack because I know some people might be here that are really going to support that kind of stack. But my point is just that you have to know what tech stack you are using. So this will be really helpful in terms of making sure everything is running properly and in terms of security as well. And also whenever you're considering a tech stack, you have to make sure, okay, this tech stack has so functionality or security features that can help prevent the DOS, which is denial of service, which is like there are some people that are able to send thousands of attacks to your website in a second, and there are some tech stack that are able to prevent this that have like some inbuilt WAF or stuff like that that are able to prevent this type of attacks. So you have to be careful about that. Also, you have to be careful about security. You have to look, okay, how are we going to build up this security plan? So what's the plan to like make sure everything we are doing is secure from the planning stage to the build stage to everything till you are done with your project. You have to make sure everything you are doing is being scanned. Everything you are doing, you are making sure the secrets are not being leaked to external party or to third parties. You are making sure everything you are doing is kept secret and is passing through the right pipeline, and it's not like someone probably third party having access to it. Also the framework as well. So we have different framework you're going to be using. So when you're building an application or when you're working on your project. So like the Angular JS, for example, if your project that needs something like a template or stuff like that, so Angular JS is really a good idea, and there are also other options as well. So you have to be careful. You have to look at the performance as well. So when you're expecting your website to have perform very well when there are when there's high usage. So you have to make sure you use a stack that that conforms with this. So the architecture, probably you're using something behind it, or a Linux machine or a Windows machine. So you have to consider this as well. And also the tools you will be using for this project. You have to make sure everything is well prepared. You have probably the scan tools, the pipeline, the CI/CD tools, everything. You have to make sure everything is readily available, and also the version control. So you have to make sure, okay, am I using GitHub, using GitLab? Okay, what are the advantage of this? Okay, this one has this functionality, but the other doesn't have the functionality. So what could go wrong if you don't, follow these principles? So you would have a buggy and slow code. So your codes might not be able, to might be vulnerable. That is, firstly, when it comes to bug, you might have bug in the sense that your code might not run properly. And also, whenever users are accessing your website, it's kind of slow. There are some websites where you visit and it takes 30 seconds, a minute, for the websites to load. Probably the website has some large JavaScript in the background that is just trying to load and stuff. So you have to make sure your code is clean and, it's not buggy, and it's not making user experience, difficult. So low code quality. So low code quality, when you don't plan carefully, whenever you working on DevSecOps project, you would find yourself writing low code qualities, because this is when you're probably okay. You're writing the code and things are not being planned very well. So you probably take code from anywhere, just make sure the thing is working without plan, and you're going to run the project like that. So with the low code quality, you are not going to scan, you are not going to make sure you are using, the secured method of, of coding. So it's difficult to maintain as well. So when you write a code and there are no plans, you have a project, the CI/CD pipeline, everything is not, working properly, or you have your Kubernetes, instances online, or your Terraform and stuff like that. And, these things are not really planned very well. So they are very difficult to maintain. You are not able to locate where you put this. You see some people, whenever they are working, it happens to everyone, of course, um, they don't know where this is, they don't know where that is. They start looking for this, they start looking for, okay, how can we get access to this, how can we get access to that, and where did I put this code? Those things, they are things that when we're building a big project, you don't have to fall into, especially if you are the one that started writing the code. So you have to make sure everything is planned. You have a dedicated folder for your project. You have everything planned down before you get started into any DevSecOps project. So introduction of vulnerabilities, like we've mentioned before, if you are not careful about the code you are writing, which is not it's not well planned. So definitely you are going to fall into like coding something that is not correct in the security aspect. So you just want to make sure everything works, but you don't care about the security aspect of it. And also we have the CI/CD attacks. So the CI/CD, pipeline is like the backbone of your project. So it's important for you to ensure it's secure, and also you have to protect the code from attack. You have to protect data leaks. You have to comply with all policies and ensure quality assurance. And also, the CI/CD pipelines, we have the planning phase. This phase, you have to make sure you take advantage of the threat modeling, that is the threat modeling, to see how you can, find where there is possibility of a vulnerability to occur, or the potential areas where an attacker might, come in. And also the second phase, which is the coding phase. So here you have to make sure the developer or anyone who is writing the code, they write the necessary code. That is, they don't just write anything. They have to make sure, okay, they write only necessary code. They don't have to write everything, making it long, making it something difficult to understand for other people. So you have to make sure it's simple and it's working fine and secure. So we have the build phase, which is the third phase of the CI/CD pipeline. So here you can include the static code analysis, where you're able to scan your code, which with the static application security testing tools. So we have that here later on in this presentation. So we have a lot of tools. We have the Snake, we have is it Vera Code and etc. We have AppScan, Codacy, etc. So you have to make sure all this phase, everything is being done without without flying, without jumping steps. So and the last phase, which is the testing phase. So this is done to dictate any potential bugs or vulnerability in your code. So you have to make sure everything is done well. You have to make sure you run container scanning tools like the Datadog. You have the NetSparker, you have the Acunetics, and many tools like that that you need to run, and also just to leave it like that on the CI/CD attacks. So increase cost and time. So it will take you more time, to build this project. It will take you collect probably take cost you more money. So you are going to spend more money on building this project, because for you to build and refactor, whenever you notice, okay, it's working in the first stage, but then you go to the probably the third stage and everything starts showing error, then you need to go back to the first stage again. You have to make sure, okay, everything is working fine, there are no glitches, everything is good. So and also collaboration becomes difficult. So whenever you write a code and it's very difficult to understand, so it will be extra stress for me to start looking into this code. So loss of customer trust. So when your site is not secure, or it's slow, or it's not working properly, then there will be issues. You probably start losing trust in your customers. You probably lose your business, and you probably lose your mind as well. So you have to make sure everything is working fine. So sensitive data exposure. So when you don't care about plans for DevSecOps projects, there's a possibility of you leaking sensitive data, such as the secret API keys and stuff, in you know to third parties. And I would like to do a little bit of live demo on this. So we have like, sorry. Okay, we have some, something we call Google Doc, for example. So this Google Doc, I think most of us here know what exterior buckets are. For example, now we can say something like in URL, Amazon AWS.com, and then just say invoice. Let's just say site. So what I'm trying to say here is that these S3 buckets, websites, so sometimes it comes with this URL. So you can use this Google Doc, search command, and whatever you want in the front, probably you want probably an invoice or stuff like that. You can see there might be some website, leaking invoice to you. So this is part of the bad, what's it called, planning in DevSecOps. So there are some people, like the S3 bucket is open for everybody. Everyone has, access to these buckets. So you can do something like probably they're storing the salary of their users in an S3 buckets, for example. Now, so there's possibility for you to see these stuffs, and also not only S3. We have a lot of stuff. You can do something like I'm trying to remember a URL for some, let's say docs.google.com. So so something like this, you can start seeing labor cost calculator and stuff, job comparison matrix. payments, but there is a possibility for website or for companies to leak their employees, salary and stuff just by making the Google Docs, public. So you have to be careful about everything you're working with out there. You have to make sure everything is secure. So anything or everything can go wrong, and that is true. To the next slide. So doing DevSecOps securely. So firstly, you have to have a checklist. You have to make sure you have a game plan for your project. You have to list all critical security controls and potential vulnerabilities. Also, in your code, you have to make sure you enforce error handling and to handle cryptographic issues. So this should be factored in your code as well. So you have to look at your software, ask yourself questions. Is this application collecting or logging data? So if they are logging data, make sure data validation is being properly checked. So for the security part, you have to name some vulnerabilities if it's taking in data. So SQL injection, cross-site scripting might be some vulnerabilities that attackers might want to, sneak into your code. So we have the cryptography part of it, which is the weak encryption, because we have to look into the hashing type. Probably you have to sort it and stuff like that. So I would just like to throw a question to you all. Um, should my credit card be stored in my database in plain text? Yes, why? No, why? Is there anyone wants to answer that?
I think I see people dropping in the chats. Allow that. No, no, no. Please give reasons why.
Yeah, you can just unmute or just feel free if it's allowed here.
Yeah, sure. Reese, do you want to say something? Reese Sabo?
Okay, for me, basically, the only reason that can come to my head now is issue of compliance, and also to avoid a possibility of exposing your client's data to the public in case of any form of attack on your database.
I think that's really the answer. So you have to make sure it's not in plain text in your database for compliance reason. How about your password? How about your password? Anyone?
No, no. I'm
No.
just
Yeah, for me, I think it's still no because your password should be encrypted because of let's say SQL injection. You can use to select all your user password and you can try and log in. If the database is compromised, you can also see user passwords which is not that.
All right. I think that's really cool. Okay, but I think the person that just spoke right now, can you define what PII is? PII, personal identifiable information.
PII.
Mm-hmm.
Have I heard that before? Personal.
Identifiable information.
So by that meaning, I believe these are personal details of a particular user that um, yeah, I don't know if I'm correct.
Yeah. No wrong or right answer right now. We are all here to learn. So I think that's a good shot. But I'll just say PII, I think it's really important for us to understand what that is, especially as DevOps engineers. PII is just any information that could be used to identify anyone. For example, your house address, your NIN, your BVN, your email address. So all these things, they are PII. So which could leak user information to any third party. So for example, I have your address and I have your email address and I have your BVN. There's high possibility that I'm able to like identify who you are. For example, if you are registering for your tax in Nigeria, so whenever you enter the BVN, it's going to bring all your information. It's going to bring your name, your age, every single info, your address, everything is going to be there. So you have to make sure all this information, not all, they're not, the PII, they are not usually encrypted in the back end. So, but all that information, so that the password, the credit card and stuff, you have to make sure everything is, checked, they're encrypted in the, back end on your database. So data code validation. So you have to check your DB, you have to make sure everything is working fine. So you have to make sure, okay, when you're working on a project, you don't just push every changes you make to the production environment. For example, now, I think doing that is just like, all this fire service, whenever they want to like quench a fire in a house, these big hose they use. So it's like drinking water from that hose. So whenever you put your mouth there and they turn on the water, the water is probably going to come out of your head from the back. So whenever you push changes to production environment like that, so it could be devastating. It could ruin stuff. So you have to make sure it goes through the development environment, then the staging environment, and then the production environment. So test, you're going to make some do some test in this environment to make sure everything is fine before pushing them to the production environment. And also error handling. You have to make sure you're handling error. I think this is really important, and this is especially for the security aspect of things. You have to make sure every error is being handled, and you are considering, you're assuming that every user is an attacker. Because if you don't handle error, there's a possibility for you to leak your secrets as well. I'm going to give you an example. There's something called this, I forgot the name just now. I think it's called Snowbite. Yep. So we have this Snowbite. So Snowbite, so it's like something like this. So it can be used to break any code. It can be used, to break stuff. Probably you have what's it called? You have a security in place. This not byte, can break it, can just cause havoc to your code. So you have to make sure you handle those errors. Make sure, okay, these errors are not causing problem on your application, because sometimes when error cause problems, they are going to leak information about your backend. Yeah. To the next slide. Is there any questions so far? Please ask.
I have a question, please.
Mm-hmm.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, sure. I can hear you.
Okay, so my question is that, okay, so you all the while about when you be talking about the security measures to take for applications and all that. So does it mean that the software this job is supposed to be handled by the software developers, or the security professionals will work hand in hand with the developers to do all this, right? Because, well, the applications are written by the developers, and today, I don't know if you're getting my point.
Yeah.
Like, so
Yeah.
how does this work? how does it work hand in hand with everybody, and then everything will be sorted out? Is it that it's going to be handled at the infrastructure level, or it's going to be handled at the point of even writing the codes? That's the question. Thank you.
I think that's a very good question. Before, I think the way it was done is for developers to write code, and then it is sent to the security engineers where they like check the code, check the application if it's vulnerable to any kind of vulnerabilities. But now it depends on like the organization where you work for. If you have a different team, for example, so it's going to work like I just explained. So the development team is going to write the code, then the security team is going to test it, then go back. If there's an issue, they send it back to the development team, and whenever the development team fix the vulnerability, they send it to the security team. Then if the security team says yes, then it will be sent to the operations team where it will be pushed, to the production environment. But now what the idea now is that we have to have like a team where everything is done at all stages. From the stage of development, you have to make sure, okay, security is being applied at that stage till when the operations team, work on anything like that. You have to make sure, okay, every stage of the DevSecOps the project is, your security is being applied to that stage. So it's basically depends on your organization. But if your organization has like a DevSecOps team, so everything will be done amongst themselves. That means the developer would have the security idea. That is, they would have, like they would understand, okay, these are the security vulnerabilities that might come from this type of code. So they are able to, like understand what's actually going on. They are able to like fix vulnerabilities. They are able to identify them as well. And this applies to the operations team as well. So anything they are doing, are they using Terraform? Are they writing like a Terraform file now? They know, okay, we are not going to put our AWS key or secret in this file because, it might just get to anyone. And they know that, okay, whenever we are doing stuff like this, or whenever we want to push our code to the version control, what's it called, like GitHub or GitLab, then we have to use like a git ignore file, which will like, filter the files that will be sent to GitHub or GitLab or anything or what have you. So this can be done by these two people, or
I think we lost him. Can anyone hear me? Or is it from my side?
Yes, I can hear you.
Well, let's just hold on for some minutes while he comes back.
okay.
Are you back? Okay, yeah. So you can go on. You can go on with slides. We lost you.
Okay. So is there any question?
I think you can go on. At the end of the session, they will have time to answer that questions.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so common unsafe DevSecOps habits. So we mentioned hard-coded credentials. So like, putting credentials in your code. So this is really common. And we have using outdated versions of dependencies of framework. So I would probably, I think this, I think I explained this in the next slide. So importation of external code, without understanding the code. So improper error handling issue, I explained that. Lack of encryption of sensitive data on the fly. So when we talk about encryption on the fly, it's like, okay, we all agree that we have to store our credit card, our password in, what's it called? We have to encrypt it in the database. But also we have to make sure that, okay, immediately the user enters their credit card, they are encrypted immediately and not only at the database level. Because there might be some, will I say, servers on your networks that receive these traffics, hereby getting access to this credit card. And whenever an attacker is able to get hold of these, servers, then this credit card might be, they might get access to this credit card as well. So my point is, on the fly, you have to make sure from the beginning, immediately they are entered, it must be encrypted till it reaches the database level. Also, okay, we mentioned insecure CI/CD pipeline. We've mentioned what to do in that aspect. So we have the copy and paste as long as it works. So we have a lot of the developer, and I think that's how that's what makes developers, a lot of them survive, which is totally normal. So, but you have to make sure whenever you're copying something, you have to make sure, okay, this thing I'm copying is safe. So sometimes over security is bad. When you overdo security is bad. For example, you might visit some website, and it's might get annoying because you might just feel, okay, whenever you enter the website, you are going to feel the reCAPTCHA. Okay. After that, whenever you log in, then it says not available because probably you made a mistake. Then whenever you try to reload again, another reCAPTCHA, or probably whenever you log in again, another reCAPTCHA, and stuff like that, just making everything over secure. So that might make, you lose customers in the future because no one has the time to waste on, passing this and crossing this check and the likes. So secure code review. So one of the things the people don't really do is doing code review, making sure their code is is secure, because most of the time people just do, okay, as long as this thing is working, there's no issue. As long as the code is working, I can move on with my project. But that's not how it works in the security field. When it works, you have to make sure it's working very well and it is secure. So running tools with root users. So whenever you run a tool, or whenever you want to run probably an application, you want to run Ansible, run Terraform, or your Kubernetes, or anything Docker. So you have to make sure you are not running as a root user. The reason is that whenever you run as a root user, there's a possibility for you to get, okay, there's something called responder.py. So the responder, it's whenever your application tries to or clicks a link, or whenever, for example, I click the link now, so the responder is going to get my what's it called, my credentials automatically. For example, when you are running as a root, you are running your Kubernetes, your cluster as a root, or what's it called now, user, and probably by mistake, your Kubernetes cluster, accessed a link which is pointing to a responder.py. So definitely your Kubernetes instance will try to connect to that responder.py, which is, let's assume it's a website now. So it will try to connect, it will supply its credential, automatically. So if the attacker is able to crack the credential, or is able to crack, the password, then they probably will have access to the root user. And I think that's the biggest win ever, whenever you have access to the root user on the Linux machine. So lack of automated backups. So you have to make sure whenever you're working on your DevSecOps project, you have to make sure there are backups in case, sometimes there's possibility for your, for your server as your data to disappear, anytime due to downtime and stuff. So disaster recovery plan. You have to make sure, okay, whenever there's a disaster, loss of data, you are able to, come up again. So it's like whenever you want to start up your Linux machine or any of your machine in a virtual machine. So like the the what's it called, VirtualBox. So there's something called the snapshot. So you have to take snapshots of the current situation of the Linux machine. So whenever something goes wrong, you're able to return to the snapshot and make sure everything is working plan. So that's like the disaster recovery plan. So you have to have an incident response plan as well. So whenever there's an incident, whenever an attacker has access to your information, what are the steps you should take, to probably negotiate with the attacker, probably, reports to the law enforcement agencies and stuff. So we have the unencrypted communication. So, running websites on HTTP. So without the secure flag there. So that's kind of, bad. So whenever you connect to a Wi-Fi, so there's a possibility for them to, have access to whatever sensitive information you put or you enter into that website. So we have the exposed instance to the public. So whenever you have instances which are exposed to the public, there's going to be issue. For example, there are a lot of Jenkins, what's it called, instances, just dangling in the public, and users are able to, like access, this console and able to run commands, able to, do a lot of things. I think a friend of mine about a year ago, he had access to a Kubernetes API, which was publicly accessible. And I think it was paid about $22,000 for that. So that's just how crazy it is whenever you expose your instance to the public. So anything you're running which doesn't need public user or stuff like that, or users accessing from long distance, so you have to make sure they are private. Or if you want to make it public, public, then make sure they are, protected with a login screen. But the best is to make sure they are internal applications. So for the hard-coded credentials, so when I was trying to come up with this slide, so I just did a little bit of GitHub search, and I was able to find like a credential. And the funny thing is that I found that Mozilla, which is a big organization, is also vulnerable to this. So let me click the link real
Sorry,
fast.
sorry, just a moment. I have a question. Is this a new thing that you just found recently?
Yeah, actually, this I found recently, but this is not recently. This I found recently, but I've redacted every information there.
That's exactly why I asked it. Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So this, for example, I was just checking AWS secret access key. So I'm going to show you how to do that as well very soon. But for this Mozilla, they were leaking the Flickr API key. Yeah, this Mozilla, right? So they are leaking, they were leaking this API key for Flickr. So which is kind of crazy. It means you can do almost anything, by you having access to these API keys. Yeah, API key, you can retrieve files, you can delete files, you can do stuff like that. So there are a lot of people, that put, API keys in their code, and I think the solution is just for you to like use environment variables, or is it called environmental variables? Yeah, so you have to make sure you do something like that, or you put them in a file and like use Git to filter these files whenever you are pushing them to GitHub. So it can happen, and it happens a lot to a lot of people. But the good thing is that whenever such thing happens, you might be doing it thousands of times and there might not be issues, but just one day, that issue will definitely come up where you would push that secret to GitHub. So let's just go through how that is done real quick, or how you can check for secrets on GitHub. So you have to just make sure you're doing this ethically. And like I've said in the past, I'm not your instructor. So you have to just enter secret after signing in to GitHub. So just do secret. Let's say AWS, for example. So then this is a repository, so you have to use code. So you have to, you keep checking, These are some. So you keep checking till you probably see them. So I don't want to really go in depth into this, but I'm just going to show you how to do that. You can do password pwd login. See people, dumping their password on GitHub and the likes. Well, to be more specific, you have to add a company, probably let's say Dell, for example. Dell.com. So there are a lot of entries. See this someone dropping an email. So there's possibility for a password to be there, but we are not going to check it. Look at this user, for example. So it's a root user and the password is Calvin. And this is their share. So this is probably an internal application because of the IP address 192.168. So, you can check for that. You can check for other things as well. Let's say secret. Sometimes you have to click this, what's it called? This code, but I'm not clicking it because of our time. This is just an overview of everything. So you go to the second page, the fifth page and stuff. So lastly, let's just do something like AWS. So you can check them like that. So just check everything. See, there might be something like this as well. So you have to be. So moving the hard-coded credentials, you have to make sure everything is, like not in your code. You have to make sure it is not pushed to public repository as well. Because if you do, it's going to be a lot of pain trying to, like get it off the GitHub because a lot of people would have access to it already. And sometimes when you delete the repository, the commit is still there. So where you probably not be able to delete. So error handling. So I think we discussed about error handling in the past. And so when you talk about error handling, so whenever a user like input something, probably something strange, like a quote, a double quote, the null byte I mentioned the other time into your code, and you are not handling the errors properly. So there's possibility for it to, dump your what's it called, the internal directory, your working directory. And sometimes I've seen situations whereby it will dump all the code in that in that file. And sometimes when you keep secret in your files, when you keep stuff like that in your file, so it will dump all the secrets, dump all the API keys, dump all the tokens, dump every single thing because of that error, which you are not supposed to like see. So you should make sure you are handling error, catching them. So we have the copy and paste merchant, which is one of the bad things as well people do. So just go on Stack Overflow and copy codes and just put it. Oh, it works. Then you move on. You have to make sure this code is secure. I actually don't really use Stack Overflow before because sometimes I go there for a simple solution and I just end up finding some strange codes, where probably someone has answered it well, but whenever you scroll down, you definitely see something strange like, wow, I'm just trying to do ABC and this person is like doing Z, Y, X. So you have to make sure everything you're doing, you understand it. Every code you're copying, you understand, okay, this is what this code is doing. This is what this code is doing. Otherwise, you're going to introduce a vulnerability. I think I would like to share an experience. So a friend of mine was working on the project and the security project per se. So he found an issue. So he was trying to bypass some of the security, what's it called, like the firewall there. So he went on Stack Overflow to search, what's it called, like the code. So when he saw the code, he saw that, okay, someone answered this question and it was the right answer. So he was able to read the code and formulate his bypass. So that was how he was able to, like bypass that application, because he knew definitely this developer might have copied this code from here. And this code that is the right answer is what is not secure. So he was able to, like do that. And before I move to the next slide, I would like to ask a trivial question. Who has seen the homepage of Stack Overflow before? If you've seen it, just say I.
Nay.
Interesting. I think that's really interesting. I guess a lot of us don't even go to the homepage, which is quite funny. So the I am policy, I think it's called I am policy. So you have to make sure everything you're doing is like, fine-grained, everything, every service, every person you are giving access to your application, they do not have, how can I put it? They do not have extra access. For example, you just want to give a user a view permission. Okay, this view permission user, they are not able to edit anything. So make sure that throughout the application, this view only user are not able to, like edit anything. And you want to build an application and you want to make sure, okay, this application can only be accessed by so IP address. So that, it might be public, but it can only be accessed by so IP address. So that as well is one of those policy. You have to make sure every permissions you're giving, every person, every users, every resources in the application itself, you have to make sure this policy, conforms with what you want, and you have to test them out as well. Like about 4 days ago, so I was working on one of the softwares in my company, and I think it's a Microsoft software. So I I think I was a view only user in the application. I was quite new to it, and they didn't want to give me like the edit user for now, so that I don't break something. So during that, I was like, oh, I think the hacker mindset just came into me. Oh, let me just try to manipulate one or two stuff. And I was able to, like edit stuff, able to delete stuff, despite me being a view only user. So I've not actually submitted the vulnerabilities, but I'm going to do that today because I've been, quite busy and stuff. So that's one of the stuff. It can happen to anyone. It happens to Microsoft. It happens to everyone. To be honest with you, I would say 70% of the vulnerabilities I've found is just as a result of, this permission issue, where a user is able to perform so, and they are being paid, well. So just to look into that, I would love us to look into one of the labs here. So, you being able to, I think this website, you have to, if you want to learn about security, just make sure you check it out. So in this lab, this lab has a horizontal privilege escalation vulnerability on the user account page, but identifies users with GUID. So the GUID, or what's it called, the GUID, is kind of different from the ID because it's quite long and it's sometimes not predictable. To solve the lab, find the GUID for Carlos, then submit his API key as the solution. Okay, let's try to access the lab. And of course, I've not solved this before. Let's see. I hope I'm still connected because, okay, cool. So now the lab said this lab has an issue. That means it has this issue. So they said, find the GUID for Carlos. That means we have to find a user whose name is Carlos. How can we find a user whose name is Carlos? So we have to look around. Wait, let's check. Okay, let's check this first blog post. Okay, this is the admin. Now I'm not logged in as any user. I doubt it. Let me see. Okay, I'm not logged in as any user. Then let's check the second post. So what we are looking for now is Carlos, this winner. Then the third post, which is, okay, cool. So we have Carlos here. So they said find the GUID for Carlos. Can you see the lower part of the screen, the URL? Let me copy it real quick. It says, okay, let's just put it here. I think this is what we need. I think this is for Carlos. When you look at it like this, so it is for Carlos.
It's showing the user ID.
Exactly. So we have the user ID for Carlos. So we have to copy it. Then after copying, let's look at the lab. Then submit API key as solution. Submit API key as solution. As the solution, you can log into your own account. Okay, let's log into our account and see. I think it's Winner and Peter. Winner. Let's log in real quick. I've copied Carlos' ID. So I think it's Winner and Peter. Okay, this is my API key now. The user is Winner, right? So let's see how we can do it. I'm not sure. I'm coming. So since this is showing my API key, then definitely is this the same ID? Let me check real quick. I'm coming. I think it's different. Let's try it there. I think this API key starts with 45IJAY stuff. Okay. Oh, so I'm logged in as Carlos now, and I can view his, his API key. So this like my ham policy. So the IAM policy here, is like, okay, let's see, let's submit solution. See if it works. I hope so. Okay, now, cool. Yeah, so it works. So the policy here is that, okay, these users, they are not protected. That means other users can access other users, information, which doesn't make any sense. I'm not an admin. I'm just a normal user as Carlos, but I'm able to access his, what's it called? His information. And also when it comes to servers.
Sorry, I have a question. Can I ask a
Okay,
question?
sure.
Okay. So if I get you, I don't know if people can also learn it. Just by hovering your mouse over the name Carlos, you were able to get the user ID of that guy, right?
Yeah, I think from the website, you can post like a blog post. So I hovered my mouse over Carlos' name.
Mhm.
I copied the ID. I copied the URL. From the URL, I think the ID.
ID. So that's an example of a vulnerability, right? The user
Yeah.
ID. Is that correct?
Of course.
Okay, thank you.
Sometimes the interesting thing is that you might have something like this. Let's assume https://daas.ng. Very sorry for using your. I'm very sure you are not vulnerable. So
Please don't expose us.
so let's assume this is my profile. Let's say Yasir, for example. Yasir, right? I'm not accessing anything, but let's assume whenever I visit here, our username, Yasir, or sometimes let's use ID. Let's say my ID is, I think I can still recall my matric number. Yeah, cool. So whenever we have this as my ID, for example, then I know of another student or user. Well, let's say whenever I access this page, I can see my email, I can see my house address, I can see my account balance, I can see my rewards, I can see my score till date. I can see the number of meetings I've attended. I can see my private messages. I can see a lot of information about myself, which are supposed to be secret to me, right? So I can just decide to change this ID to another user's ID. Let's say 390110. And if I click enter and I'm able to see those users' information again, that's a vulnerability like that. Just by changing this, a lot of things can happen. So it is called idle. Idle. I think it's in I can't recall the full. I think it's in different something. I can't recall. Okay, this is it. Let's see the full. Okay, insecure direct object reference. So where you're able to like reference, you're able to get another user's data by just changing your their ID, your ID to their ID. So it pays a lot. So in terms of that's for the user stuff. But when it comes to application, I opened Shodan the other time. I know probably a lot of us have worked with Shodan. So for Shodan, you can just do something like the SSL company name. What company can we use? Let's just say facebook.com. Just Facebook. It's taking time to load. Why is it taking time?
I think the MTN network is very bad everywhere today.
Are you sure? You want to confirm if I'm using MTN, right?
You want to expose you.
Exactly. Yeah.
The hacker.
So you want to expose me. So let's just see. Let's see another command. Let's say del. Don't know why it's not working. Strange. Okay, there's another website. Let's try it. Census.io. And we have another one, crt.sh. Okay, I think it's now going. Yeah, cool. So we have about 17,000 hosts that belongs to facebook.com. Mind you, there might be false positives. So it belongs to facebook.com. So you can see some, servers. Yeah, I've seen a lot of, don't let me call it crazy things. Sometimes you just access this and you see big companies, having their servers. I think there was a time around probably 3-4 years ago, I found something that I think it was Starbucks, and I was able to switch off their freezer stuff, so able to switch off the what's it called, some heater. I don't know, a lot of things. I couldn't even look at it too much. So when I submitted the vulnerability, I think they went crazy like what? But it was quite easy just by searching, here, and I was able to access the network. So you have to just click Census search. And this part of the security. Every time they want you to verify. Okay, this crt.sh, you can do something like this, percentage. I know that's a lot. But due to time constraint, I just want us to get done. So we're almost done. So facebook.com. This is like a white card. So here as well, you can do the same search, just check around any website, anything you want to do. So Starbucks, we have about 5,000 hosts. So stuff like that, you can just see AWS console.starbucks.com. I don't want to access this here, but let's just move on. So password self-service and the likes. So these are some of the IAM policies that you have to set for your website. You have to make sure, okay, my servers are not online. If they are online, it's because they are needed to be online. Otherwise, you have to just, keep it private, keep it internal, because there are bad guys out there waiting for you to just, put those servers online, and they would get access to it. So over security, like I mentioned before, just trying to make sure everything is secure. You, you have to, be careful about that as well, not to chase away your customers. And also, I think finally, just because of our time, so we have secure code review. So when it comes to secure code review, so you're here to check for two things most of the times. So you're here to check for source and sinks. So source, where is this vulnerability coming from? And the sink, what is executing this vulnerability? For example, now this PHP code is vulnerable to SQL injection, which could be used to retrieve information from the database. So from here, we have this variable pass, which is like getting from this pass variable here. Then we have the connection to the MySQL server. Then I've clicked on some codes here. I think it's about 2 lines. So here, I think this is the sink. This is the source now. This is where the issue is coming from. That is, this is where the user is entering the password, or this is where the password is being gotten from, wherever the user enters it. Then here is the sink, where the issue is happening. So select card from users where password equal to pass. So the user might just decide to like try SQL injection. Yeah, I know you might not be able to understand that. You might not be able to get that right now, but believe me, whenever a user is ready to put in something like an SQL injection here, so they're able to do it. So to solve that, you have to use these add slashes and this function as well. So to do that, you have to just wrap it into this. Let me copy that real quick. Don't know. So you have to just do something like this. Just using that equals to, so that we can get to we can do this. So you just like putting this there to check the user input, or you do it like this to just check everything is being checked and everything is being filtered before it is passed to this SQL statement. So this is just used to escape any kind of harmful what's it called, user input. So it's inbuilt in PHP. So that's what you're going to look for when you are looking into code review. You have to make sure, okay, everything is fine. Every user input is checked. Otherwise, if it's not checked, then there will be problem along the line. So always try to validate user input by testing the type of user input. Sometimes whenever you are requiring a user to enter their age, you have to make sure these users are not entering ABC scripts or any kind of word. Otherwise, there will be issues. So the length you want, probably just 2 lengths, probably 18, format and range. To test the size and the data type of inputs and enforce appropriate limits. So you have to check the size. Okay, I want 18 words maximum here. There are some I've seen people, like try to DOS server, like they copy about 500,000 words and they paste it into a user, what's it called? Since the limit is not enforced, it goes to the backend and it destroys everything. The server crashed and nobody was able to access the website again. So you have to make sure you enforce limits. So if your code checks the limit, okay, it's more than 18 word, then it strikes the request. It's going to return it to the user. Please do not enter more than 18 words or characters. So never build SQL statement directly from user input. Yeah, you have to make sure you filter it. You have to make sure you escape the bad characters. So implement multi layers of validation. So you have to make sure, okay, your security is not just one layer. When you're doing it, you have to make sure, okay, this layer must be secured. Then if this layer is secured, then like I mentioned in the past, that you don't just make sure your database is secured. You have to make sure every single place the data is passing through, it is secured. From servers, from stuff. You have to make sure you are filtering. You have to make sure it's properly encoded and stuff. So be careful of concatenation. So when concatenating, that is, joining your variable or your data to another, yeah, what's it called? Probably another data or stuff, or putting it inside a function. So here are some of the places where issues might arise. For example, I want to make my website beautiful. So I want to say hello, then my name. So that's the example of concatenation. So these places, issues might just come up along the line, but we don't want to go into details for that. So review all codes that calls exec, eval, or any SQL code. So anything that's executing in your code, you have to make sure you review what they are doing. You have to make sure, okay, everything is being executed well. There are no glitches, and there are no okay, this thing is not filtered before it is being executed. For example, now you have to make sure you are filtering quotes and double quotes before it is being executed. Otherwise, there's the possibility of SQL injection if you are not filtering that. And ever, I think but there's a common saying that ever is evil, because it introduces a lot of vulnerability or any SQL call. So you have to just make sure you check everything. So static code analysis tools. So we have the Snake, we have the Veracode, SonarCube, Checkmarks, we have the Trivi. The Trivi. So here are some of the resources where you can, practice offline, or books where you can probably see, gain one or two things about DevSecOps or security as a whole. And finally, thank you all for listening. I really hope you do all have a good afternoon.
Wow, that was fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. I can see people, giving the clap sign. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Yusuf. Yasir. That was a fantastic, session, and you were able to take us through, the different parts of your software development lifecycle where you need to, implement security. And I can tell you one thing I took from your session is that you need security at all levels, right from where you are planning up to the deployment, the operations, and so on like that. So really an interesting session, and I do appreciate that. And at the same time, we are able to pass us the knowledge which we also needed for the session. Thank you so much. I don't know, Dako, are you there? Okay, I know there are going to be a lot of questions, and if you have questions, can you just raise up your hands, and I will call you one after the other. Just give me the what's it called, the raise hand symbol, and I can call you one after the other to ask your question. So I am going to start with who's the first person, because I want to see some hands. Emmanuel Ibok, yeah, please go on. Emmanuel.
Okay. Good afternoon, sir. Good everyone. Sorry, I didn't really understand all about share, but I wanted to ask concerning the IAM rule, like permission. Is it that you can grant permission in every of your tools? Like, let me say, for example, when you want to grant permission to in Kubernetes, you can do that too, and also in let me use an example, Jenkins, or if you're working with Jenkins.